Yo, what's up guys? Today we're going to be doing a bit of a different video. I'm here to break down and kind of VOD review some sequences and just kind of talk about why these players did what they did, why sequencing is so important, and how you can best improve at it. Sequencing is like one of the most, if not the most important skill in the Pokemon trading card game. So if you're like good at it, I mean, you're probably at the top tables at regionals and internationals, and if you're not good at it, you're probably X and 3. So it's really important, and especially with a lot of the best decks in the game right now, sequencing matters a lot. I'm going to be kind of VOD reviewing, going through some of these players, likely their thought process, and trying to give you some ideas on how to best approach sequencing in the Pokemon trading card game. If you enjoy, please subscribe, obviously. Let's just start, yeah. Alright, so on the right here, we have Azul, obviously. I'm sure everyone knows who this guy is. And he is playing a Lost Box deck against his opponent's Mew VMAX deck. So what's different about Azul's Lost Box list in this matchup specifically is that he plays one copy of Drapion V as well as Sky Sealstone. And what that lets him do is if he puts both of those cards together, if he gets both of them at the same time, and his opponent has a Mew VMAX in the active, which, I mean, he's going to. That's the only attacker he'll have. Azul is able to take a 4-prize turn. So basically, Azul's prize map is just 4-2. Like, literally, that's it. Just take 4 prizes with Drapion at some point, and take the other 2 with Sableye or Cramorant, which both can set up KOs on, like, Genesect and stuff. So Azul starts the turn with a Battle VIP Pass, searching the deck for 2 basic Pokemon. He's basically right now, this is his first turn, right? So when you're on your first turn, you shouldn't really be thinking too much about, like, you shouldn't be thinking a lot about, like, the later turns. Like, you have your prize map, obviously. That's one of the first things to think about. But in terms of, like, sequencing steps, right now you're thinking of, okay, what is your best play here? And right now, Azul's best play is to just get set up and try to build a board that's not very weak to hand disruption. Because a big way he can lose in this matchup is if his hand gets disrupted by something like a Marnie or a Roxanne. So he should focus mainly on building as stable of a board as possible. And Azul is basically, obviously with the Lost Box deck, you're trying to get cards in the Lost Zone. So Azul is just trying to, on this turn, get as many cards in the Lost Zone as possible while keeping his board as stable as possible. Alright, after he's done with the Battle VIP Pass, he's going to, I believe, start with the Chorus Experiment. Yes, he does, because this lets him see the most amount of cards before making the next decision. Generally, when you're sequencing, right, the reason he would Chorus and not Flower Selecting first is because Chorus gives him the most information because he's seeing 5 cards and taking 3. So then he can decide if he wants to, for example, let's say this wasn't a Zero Aura with Free Retreat. Let's say it was Greninja in the active, right? You would Chorus first instead of Attach Retreating because Chorus could give you more options as to what to do. Generally, sequencing, like, you want to gain information before committing to plays, like, that you can't undo. Like, you can't undo your Attach Retreat, right? Like, that's permanent. So you have to try to get as much information as possible most of the time before making decisions like that. So that's why you'll see decks like Gholdengo, you just draw a ton of cards and then start playing their superiors and supporter and stuff because you want to get all the information you can and then make the play that your hand best supports. Like, obviously at the start of the turn you should be thinking about a play that you're trying to go for this turn, right? But with decks that rely on draw power like Lost Box and Gholdengo, you're not always going to hit those plays. So Azul is basically thinking, look, all I'm trying to do here is really just, like, get set up, right? He has 2 Comfey, he has Scoop Up Nets, he's getting 4 in the Lost Zone right away. Now, with 4 cards in the Lost Zone, he could attack with Cramorant, definitely. He's just making a ton of easy decisions here, like Capture Energy. He doesn't really need that at this point. He has 1 in the hand, too, I'm pretty sure. Like, he's fine. He also doesn't really need a Manaphy in this matchup because Owen's not going to be doing any bench sniping. To Azul's knowledge, because he doesn't play like Ice Cube or anything. So now Azul, after drawing all that he has, he's going to try to think about kind of how can he secure his board, and he has the perfect card to do that with this Oranguru. Oranguru's ability, Primate Wisdom, switches the top card of your deck with a card in your hand, and Azul is basically going to put, I believe, a Chorus Experiment on top of the deck. And now what that means is that if Owen plays Marnie to limit Azul to a 4-card hand, his hand goes to the bottom, and then he draws into the Chorus off the top, meaning that he's basically, like, Marnie-proofed at this point. So he's also thinking about how, if he does get Marnie, he wants more on his board. He doesn't want a single Comfey, because it's probably going to get knocked out, right? So he benches 2 more, which makes perfect sense, because if one gets knocked out, he wants 2 available to him. And then he's also going to pre-attach to a Comfey, just because in his head, he's like, okay, how could I lose? to disruption, right? And the way you play around losing to disruption is by like doing stuff like that. Primate Wisdom, attach on the bench, like benching more Pokemon that can help you play the game after disruption. So that's basically just like a perfect turn 1. It wasn't like a crazy high skill turn 1, but it's just like making the perfect decisions basically. Like there's no decision here that I think is even really questionable. Like if you're all he's trying to do is set up. And also worth noting, I believe he could have attacked with Drapion there, because he could have just taken 2 on the Genesect, but he wanted to save it because his opponent plays Lost City, and if his opponent finds the Lost City, which is literally right here, he's about to draw into it, then he can knock out the Drapion, send it to the Lost Zone, and then Azul can't take 4 later. So he's thinking about the late game here by not attacking with the Drapion right now. So that's just like early game, all you're really trying to do is just set up, right? Establish a board that aims to best suit the matchup you're currently in. And right now for Azul, this is a great board. Colress is the next card in his deck, so Marnie's not that big of a threat. He has 3 Comfey on board, so he's going to get enough draw power after the Marnie. And he has Radiant Greninja on his bench as more draw power. He just has so many options next turn because he can afford to play this slow in this matchup. And a lot of sequencing actually comes down to matchup knowledge. What I mean by that is the more you know about a matchup, the more optimal decisions you will make. And sequencing is how you get to those optimal decisions, basically. So let's say, like Azul went for that Drapion, because let's say it was his first time playing the matchup. He might have just gone, okay, Drapion KO this Genesect. I mean, free 2 prizes. He gets Lost City'd, and then he can't win the game ever, like, at that point. So his matchup knowledge is telling him, look, we definitely play safe here and just set up. Because if we set up and establish our board, we're favored in the matchup, we should win. Andrew Hedrick is obviously one of the greats in the game right now, and he is playing this Dialga Metang deck, which routinely sends cards to the bottom of the deck with Metang's Metal Maker ability. Andrew is playing this to find Prime Catcher. He has Prime Catcher that is in his deck, and all he wants to do is find it, because if he can do that, he is just Iono'd Grant Shen to a 1-card hand. And by KOing this Bibarel with the Prime Catcher, he will take away most of his draw power and likely lead to a win. So, Andrew has sent a ton of cards to the bottom of his deck at this point, and he's thinking about how he can potentially guarantee the Prime Catcher because he has Research in hand. He also has an Ultra Ball. Notice how he's not going to shuffle the deck. He's going to not play this Ultra Ball because he knows he's sending a ton of non-Prime Catcher cards to the bottom. He's going to now, yes, this is where it is, count the deck, because he sent so many cards to the bottom that he can potentially guarantee the Prime Catcher by playing his hand right. He's going to Metal Maker first. The reason is that if he hits the Prime Catcher here, he can just shuffle his deck with the Ultra Ball and then go back in. He doesn't hit the Prime Catcher though, and that means 4 non-Prime cards go to the bottom, and he can play Research to essentially guarantee the Prime Catcher. I'm sure a lot of players in this situation would have played that Ultra Ball to get that Radiant Greninja on the bench, because that Radiant Greninja is going to draw you cards, right? But he is able to guarantee Prime Catcher by not playing the Ultra Ball at all or shuffling the deck. Not even playing the Super Rod. He's just guaranteeing the 1 card that he really wants to hit this turn. So it's basically just like, it's not a crazy play, but it's just deck knowledge, matchup knowledge, and knowing his best play, because knowing the best play is Prime Catcher, right? Or like Prime Catcher will most likely be the best play this turn. Knowing that, he's trying to find a way to guarantee it, and he's using his board to do that. So when you're sequencing, you also want to, like I already said, gain a ton of information before you do something like this, right? You want to, because Hedrick, he's one of the players, like the few players I know, that writes down on his notepad the cards that are on the bottom of his deck. And he writes down the number of cards too, for situations like this, where he wants to guarantee a card off the top. So him counting the deck right there is him basically realizing that, okay, there's this many cards at the bottom of the deck. He probably already knew that, had it in his head, wrote it down, whatever. And then he's thinking, okay, if I play this Research, I'm drawing 7. If there's like a ton of cards at the bottom and there's less than or equal to 7 cards that aren't on the bottom for Metal Makers, there'll be Prime Catcher there. This is a perfect example of odd maximization. Maximizing your odds is one of the most important things in the Pokemon TCG, because nothing is really guaranteed ever. But you can actually create situations like this one where something is guaranteed, because by sequencing properly and knowing the best plays to maximize your odds, you can basically do what Hedrick just did and get whatever you want done. Because like a lot of this is deck knowledge and matchup knowledge, right? but a lot of it is just knowing what your best play is, identifying the cards that you need to make that play. Those are like the first 2 steps. You gain your information with like card draw, or in this case, metal makers, and then you figure out how to best play the hand and your deck to maximize the odds that that play connects. But in the event that it doesn't, you should have a backup plan in mind, which is why you wouldn't want to commit to stuff like retreating, because that could screw up your game plan if you whiff. So, like, you want to always have plans in your head, like, backup, like, okay, my best play here is Prime Catcher, but what if I don't hit it? Then I think just KOing Baxcalibur is not a terrible play here. Like, it's like, you're taking a knockout, so you're going down to 1 prize left. Passing is really never the right play, honestly. Those are really his only 2 options. He's always thinking about that, obviously. You never want to retreat. You leave Dialga active. Like, you want to find the best play, right? Always. You want to make the best plays in the Pokemon TCG, duh. But, like, a lot of people don't understand that making your best play isn't just about, like, playing the cards from your hand. It's about how you get there, which is why sequencing is so important. It wouldn't be a sequencing video without talking about some high-level Gholdengo EX gameplay, as Gholdengo is kind of the best sequencing, like, deck. I don't want to say best, that's a weird way to say it, but, like, it's the deck that relies on sequencing the most to build as much of an advantage in game as possible. So, this is Daniel Magda, obviously regional champion. This is from the top 4 of the Gdansk Regional Championships of 2025. Daniel is basically trying to think right now, what is his best play? What would he most want to do? And it's basically to boss KO this Frostlass, right? This is the biggest threat on Arthur's board, because if Arthur gets enough Frostlass set up, then Daniel's in a pretty tough spot. And by KOing this one, it means that next turn, Arthur has no Frostlass, and he's maxed to 1 Frostlass if Daniel doesn't KO anything else. Daniel actually starts the turn with a Genesect, a Nest Ball for Genesect, and grabbing 2 Gholdengos. The reason he did this is he has 1 coin bonus on the bench, right? But he doesn't want to draw into Gholdengos or Genesect off it when he can just Nest Ball, thin 3 cards out of the deck, and have better odds. And he's also, notice how he evolved 1 by 1 there. That's just because you don't want to commit to decisions, really, until like you've seen cards. That's why you'll see a lot of high-level players on like Gholdengo and stuff evolve into 1 Dango, coin bonus with it, then evolve into another, then coin bonus with it, because you don't want to fully commit, and it especially matters in this matchup because there's a Frostlass that's going to hit these if they evolve. So you want to get a lot of information before you commit to a ton of plays like that. Daniel ends up drawing into a ton of stuff. He doesn't really like putting the Lunatone Solrock in play in this matchup. And this is where it's okay to retreat and then do decisions after, because it draws him an extra card. Like, you might as well. It ends up hitting the boss KO on Frostlass, which is what he wanted to. But it's not like a crazy sequencing play. Again, not all the best plays are flashy. Also, a great play here, thinning out these 2 Nest Balls. Just playing both of them and failing them. Don't want to grab anything. The reason is that he doesn't want to draw into them later in the game. So, I mean, that's just basic thinning, right? You don't want to see them later, just chuck them away. Get rid of them. Also, worth noting, because there's not really much else here, he ended up, before going for this play, right? He played Artisan before even Nest Balling for Genesect. He used Artisan, and the reason is he wants to guarantee that he's hitting this play. It's technically odd maximization, because if you Artisan and your Genesect's prized, then you, like, I don't know, you don't want to Nest Ball and then have your Genesect prized, right? So you Artisan and check first, because you're not going to Artisan for anything here as Daniel. You don't want to bench the rocks. So you're going to Artisan, make sure that your stuff's in there. You should do this all the time, especially if you haven't really prize checked too much in that game. You should just get information from your deck, like with this Artisan, or if you're already going to fail a card like a Poffin. Let's say Daniel had like a Poffin in his hand. If Artisan's not in play, he could have just played the Poffin. Or even if like Spikemuth is in play here, he can just hit the Spikemuth, make sure everything's in there, and then go. Because you don't want to end up getting burned by wasting resources when you don't really need to, right? Especially when you're committing to larger plays. This is a smaller play, because if Genesect's not in there, like I don't know, it sucks, but at the same time, you kind of like would have to change your game plan, right? Which is why you should Artisan, and then you have more time to think also. It's just like another heads up thing that you should be doing, like in general. If you're playing against like Grimmsnarl and there's like Spikemuth in play, before you really commit to plays, you should probably just check the Spikemuth and see what's in there, unless it would mess up your deck order. Like if your opponent Iono'd you, then there's a case whether to or whether to not Spikemuth, depending on what's on the bottom of your deck. Those are just little things, though, obviously. And like when you're drawing cards, especially with Gholdengo, you want to Pheasantipity flip the script before anything else, or like Lunar Cycle, because those see you the most amount of cards. There are sometimes cases where you want to coin bonus before Lunar Cycle, and that's when that energy being in your hand or not could be the difference between winning and losing. Like, let's say this is the last turn of the game, and you have like Lunar Cycle and on board. He only has one energy in hand, but he can coin bonus, and he needs a boss. He should just coin bonus, and if he hits the boss KO. And then if he whiffs, you Lunar Cycle and try to hit energy boss. There's stuff like that. I mean, you just want to basically, my final takeaway kind of from this video, this is a bit of a short one, but my final takeaways for you guys are that sequencing isn't something you can just do overnight, because these plays are made by players who have played this deck hundreds upon sometimes thousands of times before making them. So in order to make the best plays, you have to play the deck a ton, and the best way, no doubt, to improve at sequencing in the Pokemon TCG is just to play Pokemon. The more Pokemon you play, the more advanced your sequencing will become naturally, because you'll know what the best plays are. And your odd maximization, like, I didn't get any coaching or anything for Gholdengo. I've just been playing it for like almost a year, which is how I was able to like top 64 Toronto with it, bubble out of top 64 at Milwaukee, because like you kind of just learn this stuff over time the more you play the deck. I grinded this deck so much, and like Daniel, he's a big Gholdengo grinder. So the more you play the deck, the better you're going to get at the deck. Play the deck a lot. Don't like switch decks constantly, and like, because then you're going to be juggling too much. Just stick to one deck, at least right now. Post-rotation, it might change because of, you know, we're losing Iono and stuff, which could change stuff. But, like, I don't know. All you have to do really is just, if you play enough Pokemon and you play enough decks that are hard to pilot, and you're not just playing, like, troll decks that are easy, brain dead to play, like, you should learn stuff, right? Like, you should at least pick up on some of this stuff that you might not need to see in, like, a video. Obviously, videos and coaching can be useful. I'm not personally a fan of coaching because I think it's, like, kind of, I don't know, I've just never really been a fan of it, because it's kind of, in my eyes, a little bit of a scam, because you can get all this info for free by just playing the game. Obviously, coaching exists because some players don't want to play the game an extremely high amount, which is why they look at coaching. Like, the time that you're spending looking at, like, this video even, is time that you could have spent playing a game on live. Every game you play makes you better at the game in some way if you're playing to improve. So for sequencing, just play the game more, and try to keep things in the back of your head that I've said in this video. Identify like your best play or your optimal line. Identify the cards that you're really going to need to make that play. Gain information with like card draw and your abilities or supporter for turn. And then figure out how to best play your hand to make what you think is the best play in that situation. This applies to like every deck ever, every game ever in the Pokemon TCG. And it's why the same players keep doing well at tournaments, you know, event after event. So I hope this video has been helpful. If it was, please like, subscribe, whatever. Anyways, take care. Have a good one. Bye.